The last transport ship from the fallen capital was a scarred beetle of blackened metal, groaning as it settled onto the cracked landing pad of outpost K7. The war was over. The galactic consensus had shattered. Its peace bought with unimaginable blood, and now the long, grim work of salvage began. The human emerged from the ship's shadow, his frame still carrying the tense set of a soldier, though his uniform was stripped of all but the most basic identifiers. They had given him a new title, custodian. His duty was to the outpost, a forgotten relay station on a silent, moss-draped world, and to the cargo he now escorted. She was small, a pale figure wrapped in a gray travel cloak. Her species, the Alari, had been the heart of the consensus, their gentle, empathic nature guiding the Alliance for centuries. It had also made them the first target in the war. The figure beside her, a tall Alari diplomat with tired eyes, placed a slender hand on her shoulder before turning to the human. "The continuity of our culture now rests in scattered fragments," the diplomat said, his voice a soft melody of sorrow. "She is one such fragment. You will keep her safe until the arrangements are complete. The enemies of peace still stir in the dark." The human nodded, a single sharp dip of his chin. Words were pointless. Promises were even more so. He had seen too many broken. He simply gestured toward the outpost's main hatch, a rusted metal mouth in the planet's rocky skin. The interior of K7 was a tomb of dead technology and stale air. The human led the girl to a small chamber that had once been a secondary climate control room. He had cleaned it, installed a functioning cot, a light, and a sealed nutrient synthesizer. "This is your space," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "The door code is your own. I will not enter without your permission." The girl, who had not spoken a word, simply stared at the floor. Her large silver eyes held a light that seemed dangerously close to extinguishing. Days bled into weeks, marked only by the slow dance of the planet's twin moons through the observation ports. The human performed his duties. He checked the perimeter sensors, maintained the communication array that received only static, and ran system diagnostics on machinery that had no purpose anymore. He was a ghost maintaining a haunted house. The girl was a quieter ghost. She moved through the corridors without sound, a wisp of gray. She did not speak. She ate when he left rations outside her door. She would sometimes stand for hours before a large port, watching the violet moss forest sway in the acidic wind. A human understood silence. He respected it. He left her alone, yet his protection was absolute. Every night, he slept in the corridor outside her sealed chamber, his back against the cold plating, a rifle across his knees. It was not procedure. It was instinct. The first break in the silence came during a routine external check. A seismic tremor, common on the unstable world, triggered a rockfall near the eastern sensor pole. The human suited up to clear the debris. As he worked, a shadow fell over him. He turned, his hand flying to his tool, to find the girl standing there. She wore an ill-fitting environment suit, its helmet visor revealing her wide, watching eyes. He pointed back to the airlock, a sharp, commanding gesture. She shook her head, a small, defiant motion. Then she lifted a slender hand and pointed past him, toward a cliff face where a cascade of luminous blue lichen bloomed, a breathtaking splash of color against the gray stone. He stared, then back at her. He gave a single grudging nod and returned to his work. She did not help. She simply stood, a small monument to witness, watching the lichen, then watching him heave rocks with a relentless, tireless strength. When he finished, she followed him back inside. Without a sound dot, it became a pattern. She began to appear during his duties. She would watch him recalibrate a generator, her eyes missing no detail of his careful, deliberate hands. She would sit silently in the mess hall while he consumed his bland nutrient paste. Her presence was no longer that of a ghost, but of a silent satellite orbiting his grim routine. One day he found a small woven mat of dried violet moss outside his own bunkroom door. It was clumsily made, but intricate. A gift. He picked it up, turned it over in his calloused hands, and placed it carefully on the small shelf beside his rack. The next morning he left a ration bar outside her door. Not the standard issue. It was one of the few remaining from his personal stash, flavored with a faint, sweet citrus from Earth. It was gone an hour later. The war had not left them. It came in the night. Proximity alarm screamed, a sound the outpost had never made. Red light bathed the corridors. The human was already moving, rifle in hand, crashing into the command nexus. The screens showed 3 small, armed skiffs of pirated design descending through the cloud cover. Scavengers, or something worse. He sprinted to her room. The door was sealed. He punched the override, the emergency code he had never used. The door slid open. She was curled in a corner, her silver eyes wide with a terror he recognized. A mirror of battles past. "Come," he said, the word cutting through the siren's wail. He took her, not to an armory, but to the heart of the outpost, the primary life support control nexus. It was a fortress of essential machinery. He guided her into a narrow service crawl space behind the main environmental processors. "Stay. Do not move. Do not make a sound," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for question. He handed her a small, blunt maintenance tool. It was not a weapon. It was a last resort. She took it, her hands trembling. He sealed the access panel, leaving it slightly ajar for air, and turned. He did not go to meet the boarders at the airlock. He let them in. He listened as the outer hatch was blasted open, as heavy, booted feet echoed in the empty hangar. There were 4 of them, a brutish mix of species. Their chatter greedy, and Loud Dot the human became the outpost itself. He killed the lights, plunging them into darkness broken only by emergency strips. He vented atmosphere from corridors they were not in, the sudden roar of air making them jump and fire wildly. He triggered containment doors, splitting their group. He used the intercom, playing a recorded segment of a forgotten security alert in 3 languages, making them think there were more defenders. He hunted them in the dark, not with fury, but with a cold, surgical precision. The first fell to a wiring conduit swung from the shadows. The second he caught alone in a storage bay, disarmed him with a vicious twist, and rendered him unconscious with a strike to a nerve cluster. The third he led into the coolant filtration chamber, where the floor was slick with condensation. The pirate slipped, and the human ensured he did not rise. The fourth, the largest, found the command nexus. He was tearing at the panels, looking for data cores. When the human stepped from behind a support pillar, the fight was short, brutal, and silent. The pirate was strong, but strength in the open meant little in the close dark. The human used the pirate's momentum, the edges of consoles, the very architecture of the room as weapons. When it was over, the human stood breathing heavily, his knuckles bleeding, surrounded by fallen foes. Only then did he return to life support. He opened the panel. The girl was there, the tool still clutched in her hand, her face streaked with silent tears. She looked at him, at the blood on his hands, at the fierce, unprotected light in his own eyes. He had not just protected a charge. He had defended a home. He reached out, not to take the tool, but to gently pry her fingers from it. Her small hand turned, and for a fleeting moment, her fingers brushed against his bloody ones. A touch, an acknowledgement. He led her back to her room. The alarms were silent now. He posted himself once more in the corridor, his back to her door, a sentinel against the returning quiet. The next morning, She emerged as he was cleaning his rifle. She walked past him to the nutrient synthesizer. She worked the controls, something she had never done. 2 paste packets emerged. She brought them both to the small table and sat down, looking at him. He hesitated, then sat across from her. They ate in silence. But it was a different silence. It was not the silence of the void. It was the silence of a shared world. Weeks later, the scheduled transport arrived. The Alari diplomat returned, his relief palpable. The safe haven is prepared. You have done the consensus a great service, custodian, he said. The girl was packed. Her few belongings, including the now finished weaving of a large, intricate moss tapestry, placed in a case. She stood before the human as the diplomat waited at the hatch. She looked up at him, this soldier of a broken war, this silent keeper of her fragile peace. She finally spoke, her voice like wind chimes, hesitant but clear. "Thank you," she said. He nodded, his standard response. But then he did something else. He reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out the small, clumsily woven moss mat she had given him. It was smoothed out, cared for. He offered it back to her. A reminder, he said, the words unfamiliar in his mouth, of a quiet place. She took it, and then, with a courage that dwarfed any he had seen on a battlefield, she reached out and took his hand. She held it for a long moment. The diplomat looked away, respecting the private treaty being signed in that gesture. She turned and boarded the transport. The human watched it lift into the pale sky, shrinking to a speck, then to nothing. The outpost was silent once more. He returned inside. On the table in the mess hall, where they had shared their silent meals, lay the large, beautiful tapestry of violet moss she had woven.